Okay, magandang araw sa ating lahat. So, sa pagpapatuloy ng ating discussion about proving two triangles are congruent using SSS, SAS, ASA, and AAS para sa quarter 3, week number 6. So, meron na akong na-upload na previous video about this. So, more examples pa tayo. So, ang objective natin is just the same from the previous video. At the end of the lesson, you will be able to prove two triangles are congruent using SSS, SAS, ASA, and AAS. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel para maging updated kayo sa mga latest video about grade 8 mathematics. So, ito yung first example natin sa ating continuation. Meron tayong given which are segment AB congruent to segment BC and segment AD is congruent to segment CD. So, meron na tayong mga markings dito sa ating figure. And we will be proving that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CBD. So, gagamit ulit tayo ng two-column proof. Para sa first statement natin, we will be using segment AB congruent sa segment BC. At ang ating reason ay, of course, given. So, para sa second statement natin, gagamitin natin yung segment AD is congruent sa segment CD. At ang reason natin rito ay, of course, given. Ngayon, dito sa ating figure, meron na tayong mga markings. Makikita na natin yung magiging next statement natin. So, we will be having segment BD congruent to segment CD. And the reason is reflective property of congruent. Ito siya. Ayan. So, from this, we can now prove that the triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CBD by the SSS postulate or the side-side-side postulate. For the second example, now we have the given segment CB bisect angle ABD. And we need to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DBC. So here is the figure. Now for the statement again, we will be using segment CB bisect angle ABD. At ang reason natin para rito ay given. Para sa second statement natin, titignan natin yung figure since ang second statement natin is related to the statement number 1. Ayan, makikita natin that angle ABC is congruent to angle DBC. Since this segment CB is a bisector of angle ABD, there are two angles formed. Yan. So, yung dalawang angles na na-form are angle ABC and angle DBC. So, dahil dito, we can say that the reason for the second statement is the definition of angle bisector. Ngayon, para sa third statement natin, makikita natin from the figure that the segment BC is congruent to segment BC by the reason of reflective property of congruence. And for the fourth statement, since segment BC or segment CB is the bisector, we can also say that there are another two angles formed from the other side of the figure. So magkakaroon tayo rito ng angle ACB at angle DCB. So yan yung dalawang angles na na-form gamit yung bisector na to ng segment CB. So meron tayong angle ACB, congruent siya sa angle DCB. At ang reason natin rito is of course the definition of angle bisector. And now, for the last statement, we can now say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DBC. And the reason for this is the ASA postulate or the angle side angle. Since segment BC is the included side. Okay? So, yon. Next. Now, after we discuss how to prove two triangles using the different postulates, so let's discuss how can we prove the corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, na kung saan kilala din as CPC-TC. So, the objective, to prove that segments are congruent or angles are congruent, find the congruent triangles of which they are corresponding parts. Example, given segment MA is congruent to segment MI, and another given which is segment AP is congruent to segment IP, we will be proving that angle A is congruent to angle I. So, our first statement here will be segment MA is congruent to segment MI. At ang reason natin dito ay given. So, yan. Meron na tayong marking sa ating figure. Para sa second statement, we can use the segment AT is congruent to segment IT. At ang reason natin rito ay, of course, given. Ayan. So, meron na tayong marking sa figure. At base dyan, we can now say for the third statement, we can use this one. So, segment MT is congruent to segment MT. At ang reason natin rito is reflective property of congruence. Now, kung makikita ninyo, masasabi na natin na yung triangle MAT is congruent to triangle MIT. So, anong reason yan? That is SSS or the side-side-side postulate. O kapag na-prove na natin na yung dalawang triangles ay congruent, we can now say that the angle A is congruent to angle I by CPCTC, or corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So in other words, kapag na-prove na yung dalawang triangles ay congruent, it follows that the corresponding parts are congruent. Next example. So here, the given segment AI is congruent to segment TI, and we have angle A is congruent to angle T. We will be proving segment FI is congruent to segment HI. So the statement, the first statement, so gagamitin natin si segment AI congruent sa segment TI. Ang reason dito ay given. And for the second statement, we can also use angle A is congruent to angle T, and the reason for this is given. Ayan, so may markings na tayo sa ating illustration or sa ating figure. Ngayon, para sa third statement natin, titignan natin yung figure kung ano yung possible na magagamit nating parts. At yun yung angle AIF at yung angle TIH are vertical angles daw. So, ibig sabihin, ang reason natin para rito is the definition of vertical angle. Ito siya. Ngayon, kung mapapansin ninyo, yung ating pang-apat na statement is connected sa ating pangatlong statement. So, ang ating pang-apat na statement will be angle AIF is congruent to angle TIH. At ang reason natin para rito is the vertical angles are congruent. So, since we already know that we have the angle, the side, and an angle, we can say that triangle AIF is congruent sa triangle TIH by the angle side angle postulate. So, na-prove na natin na yung dalawang triangles ay congruent. So, it follows that the corresponding parts are congruent too. So, mapuprove na natin na yung segment FI is congruent sa segment HI by the reason of CPCTC. So, yan po yung corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent.